Welcome to Colney Talk Podcast.
Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to another exciting episode of Colney Talk Podcast, your bite-sized breakdown show. I'm your host, Alex. First-time listeners, glad to have you here. And to my returning guests, thanks for sticking with me. As always, I talk a bit about the Arsenal match and pick out my top 3 Arsenal players who shined and one odd player not good enough I get to call out. Arsenal's loss against Newcastle, a disappointing struggle for creativity and drive. Oh my gosh. From the get-go, it seemed Arsenal were swimming against the current. And as much as I expected the team to rally back, there was a lack of fluidity and intensity, particularly in that midfield area, that I didn't expect that to happen. Newcastle came prepared and set up a solid, relentless defense that held us at bay. And I think a couple of things for me is, one, a shock, like we couldn't react or respond in a way. And also, we didn't react or adapt much earlier. We gave the key players on the pitch, time to adjust and try certain things. But boy, did we just suffer there. I mean, I would not even bring up any conversation about the right players. It's just one player missing at this point. And to see how we're able to interchange different players for positions, for example, Partey playing in the right back position while Ben White's on the bench, that is amazing. That's good enough. He's covering a lot of ground. We're not losing much, which is great. But then for much of how this team has responded, trying to find a solution, which we have in the past, and we couldn't do that in this match, became quite a shock. I mean, from the early goal by Isaac, Arsenal seemed to stumble, and they were unable to pull together enough cohesive plays to break Newcastle's two-layer defense. That aside, we did not have something worth showing as our response. Clearly, it was one with more questions than answers for me, especially around the few top players like Trossard, Havertz, that you would expect to have killer instincts and for the team to feed off of. I mean, that feeling, the reaction, the shock, that disappointment, it all just combined together was totally how I felt from the game, the first half, and just thinking, okay, let's just see how some of this would turn out. Just even looking much further towards the end, like, okay, I know we're going to get a better result, or the team will find that answer, which they have done in the past. I just was disappointed. Arsenal started with decent awareness, but quickly fell into Newcastle's pressing traps. Within the first 15 minutes, Newcastle's defensive shape was evident. They forced Arsenal wide and into a slower pace game. That's not a problem, which I think, even though it affected our rhythm, the start-stop, that's a really big problem, but we've done that. We've faced that. And playing wide is one of our greatest strengths. We have Saka, we have Martinelli. It's our usual entry point in how we build up and, carry on the other players and hold the width. But even though we had about 60% possession, we could not convert that into real threats, especially with Newcastle's physicality in each duel. Our expected goals, our XG in the first half barely moved the needle, hovering around 0.2, and that was a telling sign of our struggles. I usually look past these stats because that's just like a moving middle or a moving situation, because there are certain moments and things that may seem that we would have a higher XG and there's nothing to show for it. And contrastingly, we would have a lower XG and we would just fire on all cylinders and make things happen. But again, I just felt there's no need to react that quickly. Just give the players time. There's still so much to deal with. This is a different team in a sense that we're playing against, as far as how they are stacked up. Players we have missed in previous games and players that we don't have, and all that just comes into play. Not expecting it to be the same team that you play every single time. And again, there was a lot of that consideration, but did not remove the expectation for Arsenal to show up, perform much more than it did. A major issue was our midfield. And that inability to link up fluidly goes to credit on Newcastle's defense. I mean, Declan Rice was impressive in his commitment. He was all over the pitch, battling for loose balls, holding up the defense, similar to Mikel Merino, but without consistent support from Trossard or any real width from our flanks, Newcastle contained him effectively. Our passing build-up hit a wall every time we approached Newcastle's third. It felt like the moment that we lost the ball deep in their final third, it was just a sprint right down to our box, and I just couldn't understand how we didn't push that back or retain it. I mean, obviously, when we lose the ball there, we climb up to regain possession or lock down every channel, which we did in some moments. But again, it was so clear that, our lack of incisive, passing lanes limited our inability to test Nick Pope. One glaring moment, though, Trossard missing Saka on a clear run, and that felt a mischance that it really exemplified the disjointedness of our attack, and there were just that disappointment, which I felt, okay, maybe I could see it two ways, a good sign of what is yet to come, but hadn't. So I held on to hope. And then there was Trossard, a frustrating presence in this game. He struggles to get involved meaningfully. Maybe this is the frustration of not having Odegaard or Odegaard-like replacement in terms of creating something in this game, just compounded and felt like it would start with a player if they didn't meet that. So Trossard obviously positioned in attack, but lacking the aggression needed against a physical team like Newcastle. He couldn't find his footing. Honestly, he was an invincible figure where we needed someone to unlock spaces and create sparks. And that pretty much covered the first half. Second half didn't show much improvement initially. Right from the whistle, I was looking to see an adjustment from Arsenal to create more chances than in the first half. Well, Newcastle's tactics hadn't shifted either. They kept applying pressure on Arsenal's build-up, and we failed to respond in ways that I thought would give a little bit of spark. Arsenal's difficulty continued in getting through Newcastle's lines, and with the field tilt still favoring Newcastle, we had regained possession, yet couldn't turn that into something. Now, it clearly sounds like a broken record, but I see this as a way of, pounding and finding that opening or finding that space, finding that one golden chance. And it's for us, Arsenal, to continue creating that. And in the game, I was looking for that. Arsenal couldn't really combine a couple of these plays in the box, or at least have a player centrally do that. So it definitely says a lot to how Newcastle had positioned themselves, the way they were going to attack us defensively, and the way they really shut us out. I mean, Newcastle maintained positive play in defending and pressed us out of rhythm effectively. So that's full credit to them. Arsenal couldn't maintain composure in the midfield, as I said. We were stripped of our creativity and looked disjointed. Changes were clearly needed as the struggle persisted. I hoped when Zinchenko and Ethan Nwaneri came in that would change and create some dynamic a bit when we didn't have any of that at all. But it certainly looked like we were reactive on the ball going forward rather than being proactive. So these players with the profile that they brought in started something, but we needed more, clearly. And then bringing on Jesus and Ben White later sure looked like another answer to what I was just mentioning. Sadly, didn't have any effect, or it seemed like maybe it happened much later. And any effect of our scoring chances either fell flat or just didn't seem to connect to the right people that were still on the pitch. Add to that, Saka's knock didn't help matters either. He seemed less effective than usual, but that guy is tough. He's a tough cookie. He just kept playing and pushing. And as a captain in this game, he definitely wanted to show himself strong given the circumstance. The Gunners were determined to change their fortunes for sure, but we faced deep low blocks from Newcastle's defense, and that held off our attempts to get back in the game. It did remind me, quite frankly, of Arsenal when we're 1-0 up or 2-1 up, and we're in the same situation, holding on to our lead as the song goes, 1-0 to the Arsenal. So this was a reflection of who we are and what we do, and now we were being served the same scenario. I thought we would get some good creativity with the amount of players like Jesus, Waneri, and Saka and Havertz to disrupt that, but it was just almost impossible. As we headed towards the final minutes before added time, Arsenal were still searching for answers. Set pieces and corners yielded little until one big chance arose from Saka's cross. Unfortunately, Rice couldn't direct his head properly towards the net, and that to me is the essence of trying different situations, trying a combination, and finding that one golden chance, that one answer, and that could have been it. That should have been that chance of getting up on the score sheet, going away with a draw, or at least build on something from that first opening. But it just didn't happen. That ended any chance for Arsenal to secure points for this match, and fully came to that final realization that we were losing the game, and that was it. Another loss felt like a bitter pill to swallow, and hardly any meaningful moments of comeback or creativity for me in this game was much hurtful than the loss. Could you imagine that? Because we always try to find some comfort. I didn't find that at all. So, it just characterized the entire performance for Arsenal, and every other positive was really outshadowed by those chances that we're really craving for, and the players that we thought that they brought on would at least show something, and that wasn't the case. But as I always do, I look more of the positives, call things out a little bit, and try to stay forward looking overall. So with that, I'll just really jump into my top 3 performance in this match. First player, Declan Rice. His work rate was good, covering vast areas, and continued to show tremendous resolve in midfield, pushing forward whenever possible and taking risks. I know that could have been his assignment. He did that way more than he usually would. Call it his, captain and leadership in him, and things that maybe Ateta did ask that he do as well, but he definitely stepped up. He was one of the few who consistently tried to press into Newcastle's half. He was arguably the engine of Arsenal's attack in terms of just that drive and momentum and building some spark. Constantly trying a lot more to advance despite the lull that we had, because in moments when you would see Saka double teamed or Martinelli double teamed, the opening that would pull in Trossard would also have Rice combining with Partey to lob it over for Havertz or get that combination going through, but just couldn't see that working. But for sure, it was evident that Rice was much higher in engine and fight to push and get things going. Second player, Mikel Merino. Merino had a great read on Newcastle's intentions, making him one of the highest contributors in ball progressions. He's 88% pass completions in the tough midfield battle was commendable, although passing completions, having that awareness in how he moved, didn't seem quite effective the way we felt overrun. And it felt maybe it could have been 3 against 2 in Newcastle's midfield, or the way they pressed us. But that effect was not necessarily in that midfield area. Could have been more up the pitch, but it felt in different pockets. And while he didn't get as much forward support as needed, Merino showed patience and poise. He fought hard to maintain Arsenal's presence in the middle, as I said, distributing well and constantly scanning for open options, but without enough support or pace on the wings, his efforts didn't lead to the game-changing plays we were all hoping for. But I just have to give him credit for being one of the top performers. Third and final player, David Raya. Under immense pressure, Raya defended well in goal with a couple of crucial saves. We were still in it. We were just 1-0 down, and that means nothing for us when we're chasing the lead. His distribution kept the defense calm. Even though we conceded, Raya was steady and composed, offering resilience at the back, and was trying to pick a moment to initiate a fast break after a number of clearance that he had come through where we needed to just move forward when things just weren't happening. There was just so much that he did, and those crucial saves did change the idea of any hope for it to come, because as the minutes were dying, it felt like, okay, now let's just, squeeze out a point and go away with something from here. And it was how I looked at David Raya and how much he kept us in the game just 1-0 down. So for sure, big positives there. Now, this time I had an odd player, and that was Trossard. While we've seen brilliance from him before, this game highlighted his limitations. Positioned high on the pitch, he failed to deliver the drive or impact Arsenal needed. He frequently lost balance or control, almost out of sync with the rest of the attack. Yeah, there were moments that he seemed indecisive. It was unfortunate that he didn't have more than one meaningful shot in the second half, or just the chances didn't create itself. But like you've heard me say a few times, just fire that shot. Just release it. Blocks or not, release it. It opens up things. It makes things happen. Too many dribbles will close it out. And when you have a lot of the physicality from Newcastle, that's something you're not going to win. I wish he had a few more shots. I wish he released a few more. Call me crazy, but that's how you can get something started. If every other tactics, build up, slow plays, slow cooks are not working, shake stuff up. And that's how I thought he would do it. Because if you're looking at the players in terms of creativity in attack, in front, he's going to be one of the players that is being mentioned. Or he's probably the primary player for that reason. And the fact that he didn't do it just reeks of disappointment. I mean, his continued presence on the field felt like a miscalculation to me. Arteta could have benefited from making the sub earlier to reinvigorate the left side. The experiment didn't work, so he should have pulled him much sooner. And that would have been a positive of taking away a lot of that pressure in one thing that wasn't working up to that moment to much later, which, again, who knew? As we all deal with the second loss of the season, Arsenal has to confront some hard truths. The inability to break down a solid defense like Newcastle's in this game is a red flag, and it's pointing towards gaps in Arsenal's tactical flexibility. No one is perfect. No team is. We're talking about Arsenal here, and it's okay to just call out where we're falling short. Arsenal's reliance on build-up and possession fell short without players able to take decisive actions. The substitutions, tough, aggressive, came too late, if you ask me, and to reverse the tempo, it just didn't seem to match the level of energy with the players. And even if one player would bring the levels up for the rest, it seemed much later in the game. Arsenal missed a sense of sharpness and urgency, and that's how we got punished for it. It's a game that will likely ignite discussions around the approach we take against teams prepared to test our composure. For sure, tactical adaptability will always be that topic or conversations of when and how it should have. But especially when creativity is under siege, it will always be a question of why not change something sooner? Because there is no light, there is no spark, there is no potential, like nothing is showing itself in any way, at least in my eyes. So that's why that conversation will continue to be dissected, criticized, questioned in different ways, and it will be among the most topics to answer. Granted, we are without our creative maestro, but let me be clear. I'm pretty sure it will take a bit of time for him to get the rust off. So as much as we're looking forward to having him come in, he's going to be rusty. He's not going to be game sharp like the rest of the players are now. So there's still a lot more to go and get him where we want him to be. But until then, we have to look at the ones we have in front of us, the players internal, and really push and make something work with how we can get that creativity spark going. Because we would not have any other answers any other place except within. Okay, I'll wrap it here for this episode. There's a lot to process, but sometimes that's just the nature of football, folks. It humbles you and exposes area where we need to grow. The upcoming fixtures will be a chance to bounce back and fine-tune our attacking setup. So I'm looking forward to how Arteta addresses these challenges. To all the Arsenal faithful, let's keep our head high. There's plenty to be hopeful for. Like we always do, we move. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, do share and subscribe. Until next time, this is Colney Talk signing off. Come on.